The widowed rancher returns to his old ranch and finds two Apache women living there. The widowed rancher had not planned to return this way. For years, he told himself that the past should stay buried, just like the quiet grave where his wife rested. But life has a way of circling back. One early morning, with the sun barely lifting over the horizon, he drove his old truck along the dusty road that once felt like an extension of his own body. Every turn was familiar. Every mile stirred memories he had tried hard to forget. The ranch had been in his family for generations. His grandfather had broken the land with his own hands. His father had raised cattle there, teaching him how to read the sky, how to know when rain was coming, and how to listen to the land instead of fighting it. Later, he had brought his wife there as a young man, full of dreams. They had built a life together among wide fields, open skies, and long, quiet evenings. But all of that changed the year she passed away. After her death, the ranch felt empty in a way he could not explain. The house echoed. The wind through the trees sounded like loss. Even the animals seemed to move more slowly, as if they felt the absence too. He tried to stay, tried to be strong, but grief weighed on him like a heavy stone. One morning he packed a small bag, locked the door, and left. He told himself it was temporary. Temporary turned into years. Now, with more gray in his beard and deeper lines on his face, he was back. As his truck rolled closer, he noticed things that did not make sense. The gate was no longer hanging loose. It stood upright, repaired with new wood. The fence line looked straight, not broken like he remembered. He slowed down, his heart beating faster, unsure if his eyes were playing tricks on him. He parked near the old barn and stepped out. The air smelled different, cleaner. There was a sense of care in the place. Grass had been cleared. Tools were stacked neatly against the barn wall. A small garden patch sat near the house, green and alive. Someone had been here. The rancher stood still for a long moment, listening. He expected silence, but instead he heard soft movement, footsteps, a low voice in the distance. His hand tightened around the brim of his hat. Confusion mixed with caution. He had left this land empty, or so he believed. Slowly he walked toward the house. The front porch, once cracked and sinking, had been repaired. The door was shut, not hanging open like before. He paused, memories flooding back. He could almost see his wife sitting there in the evenings, a cup in her hands, smiling at him after a long day. He cleared his throat and knocked. The sound felt strange after so many years. The door opened carefully. A woman stood there, her eyes steady but alert. She looked surprised but not frightened. Behind her, another woman appeared, slightly older, watching quietly. They were Apache women, dressed simply, their posture calm yet strong. For a moment no one spoke. The rancher felt words gather in his throat, but none came out right away. He was tired, unsure, and not prepared for this moment. Finally, he said the only thing that made sense. "This is my ranch." The younger woman nodded slowly. Her voice was respectful when she answered. She did not argue or raise her tone. "We know," she said. "We did not mean to take anything that wasn't ours." The rancher looked past them into the house. It was clean, warm, lived in. The sight unsettled him more than anger ever could. He had expected strangers who had damaged the place. Instead, he saw care. He stepped back slightly, needing space to think. They spoke outside under the open sky. The women explained that they were related and had been forced to leave nearby land after it was sold. They had wandered for some time looking for a safe place. When they found the ranch abandoned, falling apart, they chose to stay. Not to claim it, they said, but to survive. "We fixed what was broken," the older woman said gently. "We respected the land." The rancher listened in silence. He looked around again, this time seeing details he had missed before. The water pump worked. The barn roof no longer sagged. Even the old corral had been repaired. Anger never came. Instead, he felt something unexpected, shame. He had walked away from this place when it needed him. These women with far less had kept it alive. Still, the land was tied to his family, to his wife, to his pain. He did not know what to do with that truth. "I didn't expect anyone here," he finally said. "I came back thinking I'd be alone." The younger woman met his eyes. "We can leave if you ask us to." The words were simple, but their weight was heavy. The rancher looked at their faces. There was weariness there, but also dignity. He thought of all the nights he had spent alone in the city, surrounded by noise yet feeling empty. He thought of how this land had once given him purpose. He took a slow breath. "Not today," he said. "Let's talk first." They sat on the porch, keeping distance, sharing space carefully. No one rushed. No one pushed. The sun climbed higher as stories began to unfold, not deeply yet, but enough to understand that none of them were there by accident. As the rancher looked out over the land, he felt something stir inside him. Not peace, not yet, but a small crack in the wall he had built around himself. The ranch was no longer frozen in the moment he left. It had changed, and perhaps so had he. The road back had brought him more than memories. It had brought him a choice he never expected, one that would test not only his claim to the land, but his understanding of home itself. The next morning arrived quietly, as if the land itself was holding its breath. The rancher woke before sunrise, a habit that had never left him. He had slept in his truck the night before, not ready to enter the house that no longer felt fully his. The air was cool, and the sky slowly shifted from deep blue to soft gold. As he stepped out, he saw movement near the barn. The two women were already awake. One was carrying a bucket of water, the other checking the fence line. They worked with ease, like people who knew the land well. He stood there for a moment, watching, unsure how to enter their morning without disturbing it. Finally, he walked toward them. They noticed him and paused. There was still caution in their eyes, but also a calm acceptance. No one reached for anything. No one raised a voice. The moment felt balanced, fragile, but honest. "Good morning," the rancher said. "Good morning," the younger woman replied. They stood in silence again, not awkward, just careful. The rancher realized how long it had been since he had shared space with others without feeling the need to explain himself. He cleared his throat. "I'm going to check the south pasture," he said, more like a statement than a question. The older woman nodded. "The fence there needed work. We fixed part of it, but the far corner still leans." He was surprised. She knew the land better than he expected. Without another word, he walked toward the pasture, his boots pressing into the soil he once knew by heart. As he walked, memories surfaced, but they did not hit as sharply as before. The pain was still there, but softer, like a distant ache. When he reached the fence, he saw what she meant. The repair was solid, thoughtful. Whoever did it cared about doing it right. Later, near the house, the women prepared a simple meal. The smell of warm bread drifted through the air. It reminded him of evenings long ago when his wife used to hum softly while cooking. He felt a tightness in his chest but stayed grounded. The younger woman noticed him nearby. "Would you like to eat with us?" she asked. He hesitated. Sharing a meal felt like crossing a line he had not planned to step over, but hunger and curiosity won. "Yes," he said. "Thank you." They sat outside, under the shade of the old tree near the porch. The rancher noticed how naturally they moved around each other, working without words, understanding without explanation. He realized they had been together through hard times. As they ate, he finally asked their names. "My name is Lena," the younger woman said. "This is my Aunt Mara," he nodded. "I'm Thomas." The name sounded strange out loud. He had not spoken it often in recent years. They talked slowly at first, small things, the weather, the condition of the land, the animals that sometimes passed through. No one pushed into the past, but over time, words came easier. Lena spoke about how they had arrived months earlier. The ranch had looked forgotten then, nearly swallowed by time. They had cleaned, repaired, planted, not because they thought it belonged to them, but because land, she said, should never be left to suffer. Thomas listened. He found no reason to doubt her. He shared a little too. He spoke of leaving after his wife's passing, of not knowing how to stay. He did not go into details. He did not need to. The weight of his silence said enough. Mara listened closely, her eyes kind but steady. "Grief changes people," she said softly. "It can make strong places feel empty." The words struck him. He nodded once, unable to speak for a moment. As the day went on, they worked together without planning to. Thomas checked the water lines. Lena helped guide him to areas he had forgotten. Mara organized tools, humming quietly as she worked. It felt natural, like the ranch itself was guiding them. At one point, Thomas stopped near the barn and looked around. The land felt alive again, not just in appearance but in spirit. He felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Relief that the ranch had survived without him, sadness that it had needed to. In the afternoon, a neighbor drove by slowly, eyes lingering on the property. Thomas noticed. He felt tension rise. He knew how people talked, how assumptions formed. Later, as the sun dipped lower, he spoke carefully. "People may ask questions," he said, "about you being here." Mara met his gaze. "We are used to questions," she said, "and to being misunderstood." The rancher felt a quiet anger rise, not at them, but at the world that made such statements normal. That evening, Thomas finally entered the house. It no longer felt like a place frozen in loss. The women had kept many things as they were, respectful of what had been left behind. His wife's photograph still stood on the shelf, dusted, not moved. He swallowed hard. They didn't touch what mattered, he realized. When he came back outside, he found Lena watching the sunset. The sky burned orange and red, stretching endlessly. She loved sunsets, he said without thinking. Lena did not ask who, she simply nodded. "That's why this land matters," she said, "because it remembers." The words stayed with him long after darkness fell. That night Thomas lay awake in the old guest room, staring at the ceiling. His mind replayed the day again and again. Nothing dramatic had happened. No arguments, no demands, yet everything felt changed. He had returned expecting silence and solitude. Instead, he found people who had carried the land when he could not. People who did not erase his past but respected it. For the first time in years, the ranch did not feel like a burden. It felt like a question. And Thomas knew that the answer would not come easily, but for the first time, he was willing to stay long enough to find it. The days that followed settled into a quiet rhythm. No one spoke about decisions or ownership. There were no clear rules, only an unspoken understanding that they would share the space carefully. Thomas woke early each morning, as he always had, and found that Lena and Mara were already awake, already moving with purpose. The ranch no longer felt like a place frozen in time. It breathed again. Thomas began working the land as if he had never left. His hands remembered what his mind sometimes forgot. He repaired old posts, checked water lines, and walked the boundaries at dusk. Lena often joined him, listening more than speaking. She learned quickly not just the tasks but the way Thomas worked, slow, thoughtful, never rushing the land. Mara focused on the house and nearby grounds. She kept things simple and clean, never changing anything without care. Thomas noticed that nothing personal had been removed. His wife's things were respected, not hidden away, not disturbed. That respect softened something deep inside him. One afternoon, as they worked near the far field, Thomas stopped suddenly. He stared at a spot where tall grass had grown wild. "This is where she used to sit," he said quietly. "She liked watching the clouds from here." Lena followed his gaze. "Would you like it cleared?" Thomas shook his head. "No, let it be." They stood there in silence, the wind moving through the grass. It felt like the land was listening. As days passed, small conversations grew into deeper ones, not all at once. Grief does not open easily. Thomas spoke about his wife in pieces, her laughter, her patience, the way she believed the ranch was more than land. Lena listened without interruption. Mara listened with her whole presence, as if each word mattered. In return, Lena spoke of her past. She talked about being raised between places, never fully settled, always adjusting. She spoke about strength learned from elders, about respect for land not as property, but as something borrowed. Thomas found himself drawn to the way she saw the world. It was different from his, but not distant. There were moments of tension, too. One evening, a truck slowed near the gate again. Thomas noticed it before the women did. He felt a familiar tightness in his chest. People in the area talked. He knew what questions would come. That night he brought it up carefully. "Some folks around here don't like what they don't understand," he said. "They may come asking." Mara nodded calmly. "They always do." Lena looked at Thomas. "Are we causing trouble for you?" The question hit harder than he expected. "No," he said firmly. "You didn't cause anything. You kept this place alive." For the first time he heard confidence in his own voice. The next day a neighbor did stop by. He stood near the fence, polite but curious. His eyes moved from Thomas to the house, then back again. "Didn't expect to see anyone living here," the neighbor said. Thomas didn't hesitate. "I'm back," he replied, "and I have help." The neighbor nodded slowly, sensing there was more beneath the words, and eventually drove away. Thomas felt the weight lift slightly. Standing up even in small ways mattered. Later that evening, Mara brewed tea and shared stories by the porch. She spoke of traditions, of listening before speaking, of patience passed down through generations. Thomas found comfort in her calm wisdom. It reminded him of his own mother, long gone, who believed that people showed who they were through actions, not claims. As the stars appeared, Thomas realized something important. He no longer felt alone at night. The ranch no longer echoed, but with comfort came questions. How long could this balance last? What did sharing truly mean? Thomas struggled with these thoughts quietly. He did not want to push the women away. He also did not know how to fully let go of what he thought ownership meant. One morning he found Lena standing near the old corral, staring at the ground. "What's wrong?" he asked. She hesitated. "This place feels safe," she said. "But safety can change." Thomas understood. He had lived long enough to know how quickly stability could disappear. "It won't change without honesty," he said. That afternoon, they sat together and spoke openly for the first time about the future, not in terms of control, but in terms of care. Thomas admitted his fears of losing connection, of dishonoring his past, of repeating mistakes made through silence. Mara spoke last. "Land is not kept by paper alone," she said. "It is kept by those who protect it." The words stayed with Thomas. That night he walked the ranch alone, under the open sky. He realized that his wife had loved this land not because it belonged to them, but because it brought people together. He wondered what she would think now. For the first time since her passing, he smiled at the thought. The ranch was no longer just a reminder of loss. It was becoming a place of shared strength. And though challenges still waited ahead, Thomas felt ready to face them, not alone, but grounded by respect, honesty, and the slow rebuilding of trust. The land had taught him once before how to live. Now it was teaching him again. Change did not arrive loudly. It came in small signs that slowly gathered weight. One morning, Thomas noticed fresh tire marks near the gate that did not belong to anyone he knew. Another day, he heard distant voices carry across the land when no one else was supposed to be nearby. The ranch still felt calm, but something under the surface had shifted. Lena noticed it too. She became more watchful, her eyes scanning the horizon more often. Mara remained steady, but even she spent more time listening than speaking. The land, which once felt open and welcoming, now seemed to hold questions in its silence. One afternoon, a man from the county arrived. He wore a neat shirt and carried a clipboard. His tone was polite, but his presence felt heavy. Thomas met him near the porch. "We've had some inquiries," the man said, "about who's living here." Thomas kept his voice even. "I own this ranch, I'm living here." The man nodded, but his eyes drifted toward the house. "And the others? They're here with my permission." The man wrote something down, "just making sure everything's in order." When he left, the dust from his tires hung in the air longer than usual. Thomas stood still, watching it settle. He felt a familiar mix of anger and responsibility. He had known this would come. That evening, he told Lena and Mara exactly what had happened. He did not soften the truth or hide behind vague words. He believed honesty mattered now more than ever. "They're asking questions," he said. "Nothing official yet, but it could turn that way." Lena's face tightened, but her voice stayed calm. "We don't want to cause problems." "You're not," Thomas said. "Problems come from fear, not from people living honestly." Mara placed her cup down gently. "Fear grows when people don't know the full story," Thomas nodded. "Then we tell it." The next few days tested that decision. Neighbors stopped by more often. Some were friendly, curious. Others were distant, their smiles tight. Thomas spoke to each one himself. He explained who Lena and Mara were, how they had cared for the land when he could not, how they were there with his consent. Not everyone listened. Not everyone agreed, but Thomas stood firm. One evening, a heated conversation broke out near the fence. A man Thomas had known for years questioned him openly. "This isn't how things are done," the man said. "People will talk." "They always do," Thomas replied. "But talking doesn't decide what's right." The man shook his head and left. Thomas felt the weight of that exchange settle on his shoulders. Standing up was harder than staying quiet, but he knew silence had cost him enough already. That night, sleep did not come easily. Thomas lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind move through the trees. His thoughts returned to his wife. He remembered how she had once stood up for a neighbor who had been treated unfairly, even when it made life uncomfortable. "You don't protect land by fences alone," she had said. "You protect it by protecting people." Those words felt close now, as if she were reminding him. The next morning, Thomas made a decision he had been avoiding. He gathered Lena and Mara at the table and spoke plainly. "I don't want this to be uncertain for you," he said. "You deserve stability, not waiting." Lena looked at him, her expression guarded. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to make this right, not just by words." Mara listened closely. "What does right mean to you?" Thomas took a breath. "It means acknowledging that this land survived because of all of us. It means shared responsibility, shared respect." There was a long pause. Lena finally spoke. "Sharing isn't simple." "I know," Thomas said. "But neither is pretending the past didn't happen." They talked for hours that day. Not arguing, not negotiating, but listening. Thomas admitted his fear of losing connection to his family's legacy. Lena shared her fear of being pushed out once things became uncomfortable. Mara spoke of balance, of finding a way forward that did not erase anyone. By evening, nothing was signed. No final decision was made, but something important had changed. The conversation itself had created space where tension once lived. The pressure from outside did not stop. A letter arrived a week later, formal in tone, asking Thomas to confirm residency details. He felt anger rise again, but he did not let it turn bitter. Instead, he responded clearly and calmly, stating the truth. When Lena saw the letter, she felt the weight of it. "This is because of us," she said quietly. Thomas shook his head. "This is because of fear, and fear doesn't get to decide who belongs." A few days later, another neighbor showed up unexpectedly. An older woman Thomas barely knew stepped onto the porch and looked around slowly. "I heard things," she said, "but I also see things." She looked at the repaired house, the garden, the land that looked alive again. "This place hasn't looked this cared for in years." Her words surprised Thomas. He felt something loosen inside him. Not everyone was blind to truth. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Thomas, Lena, and Mara stood together near the fence. The land stretched wide before them, quiet and patient. "Whatever happens," Lena said, "this place changed us." Mara nodded. "And it asked something of us." Thomas looked out over the fields. He felt tired but not broken, challenged but not alone. "I won't walk away again," he said. "Not from this, not from you." The words were simple, but they carried weight, the kind of promise that did not need witnesses. The tension had not vanished. The future was still uncertain, but Thomas had faced something he once avoided: conflict, responsibility, and the truth that healing often requires standing firm when it would be easier to retreat. The ranch had tested him again. And this time he did not leave. Time moved forward, not quickly, but with purpose. The tension that once sat heavy over the ranch slowly began to loosen, like a rope easing its grip. Nothing dramatic happened all at once. There were no loud victories or sudden changes. Instead, understanding grew through small, steady actions. Thomas continued to answer questions when they came. He spoke calmly, never raising his voice, never hiding the truth. He learned that standing firm did not always require anger. Sometimes it only required patience. Over time, fewer people stopped by uninvited. Fewer looks lingered too long at the gate. The ranch slowly returned to being just a place of work and life, not curiosity. Lena and Mara remained cautious, but their shoulders no longer stayed tense all the time. They focused on what they could control: the land, the animals, the daily rhythm of work. Lena expanded the garden, planting carefully, choosing crops that fit the soil and climate. Mara repaired small things most people would not notice: a loose step, a cracked window frame, a leaking pipe. Each repair felt like a quiet promise to the land. Thomas watched all of this with deep respect. He realized that care was a language and both women spoke it fluently. One evening, as they sat together after a long day, Thomas brought out an old wooden box. He had not opened it in years. Inside were papers, maps, and letters tied with string. He placed it gently on the table. "This ranch has a history," he said, "but history doesn't end. It grows." Lena and Mara listened closely. "I spent a long time thinking this land was only mine because my name was on paper," Thomas continued. "But names don't fix fences, people do." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I want to make something clear: you belong here. Not as guests, as partners in care." The words settled quietly in the room. Lena felt emotion rise, but she kept her voice steady. "Belonging is not something we ask for easily." "I know," Thomas said. "That's why I'm offering it, not demanding it." Mara spoke softly. "Shared care means shared responsibility." Thomas nodded. "That's what I want." Nothing was rushed. They agreed to move forward carefully, with respect and clarity. They spoke about how decisions would be made together, how the land would be protected, how future questions would be handled with honesty. It was not about dividing the ranch, but about uniting purpose. In the days that followed, something subtle changed in Thomas. He slept better. He laughed more easily. The weight he had carried since his wife's passing did not disappear, but it no longer pressed him down. He felt her presence in moments of kindness, in the sound of wind through the fields, in the way the ranch felt alive again. One afternoon, Thomas walked to the spot where his wife used to sit and watch the clouds. The tall grass still grew there, just as he had asked. Lena joined him quietly. "She would have liked you," Thomas said. Lena smiled gently. "I think she would have liked that you stayed." That night the sky filled with stars. The three of them sat outside, sharing tea, listening to the land settle into darkness. There was no need to speak much. Silence no longer felt empty. Weeks turned into months. The ranch thrived. Neighbors who once questioned began to greet Thomas with warmth again. Some even offered help. Not everyone changed, but enough did to remind him that patience could soften even long-held views. One day, a letter arrived confirming that everything was in order. Thomas read it once, then set it aside. The paper mattered less than the reality around him. Lena found new confidence in the stability of the place. She began teaching local children about planting and caring for soil, sharing what she had learned. Mara became a quiet anchor, someone others turned to for calm advice. The ranch was no longer just a home, it was becoming a place of connection. Thomas realized that the land had given him something he did not expect: a future that honored the past without being trapped by it. On the anniversary of his wife's passing, Thomas woke early and walked the land alone. He spoke softly, not to the air, but to the memory he carried. "I didn't abandon it," he said. "I just needed time to find my way back." When he returned, Lena and Mara were waiting, not intruding, just present. That presence meant more than words ever could. As the sun rose higher, Thomas felt something settle deep inside him. Peace did not arrive as a sudden feeling. It arrived as acceptance. The ranch was no longer a reminder of what he had lost. It was proof of what could be rebuilt. And so, the widowed rancher did not simply return to his old ranch. He returned to life.